In this video, I'm going to try to explain dye stock solutions. A dye stock solution is a specified amount of dye powder dissolved in a specified amount of water. Okay, why do you want to do this? You do this so you can immediately get the dye powder into solution to make it safe to work with. If you're working with powder, you can inhale them and damage your lungs. So this is what you need to avoid. You need to get it into solution as fast as possible. Okay, you can make different strengths of dye stock solution. Some books call for 2% strength, some 1%. I work with 1% stock solution because I'm not dyeing huge amounts of dark colors of yarn or fiber. So to make a 1% stock solution, you need 100 milliliters of water, 1 gram of dye powder mixed together will equal 100 milliliters of stock solution. So I'm going to simulate doing this using orchid fertilizer instead of dye powder. So I've turned on my scale. I have a little vessel here to put my powder in. I'm going to put enough powder till it says 1 gram, which is around 1/4 of a teaspoon. It's not very much. There it is, 1 gram. Then I'm going to quickly close up that powder so I'm not inhaling it, and I would set this in a bowl of water, not on the table, not on the work surface. Then I'm going to add 100 milliliters of water. In this case, I think I'm going to remove it from the scale. I'll explain further, do the actual process in another video. But you're just dissolving it and adding it to the water. Okay, so if that was dye powder, that would be 100 milliliters of 1% dye stock solution. So that's the basis behind it all. 100 milliliters of water plus 1 gram of dye powder equals your stock solution. Then from that stock solution, you can add it to your dye bath to get the different shades, and I'll go into that later. Okay, I'm going to try to illustrate a little more about the stock solution. So we just mixed 100 milliliters of stock solution, which consists of 100 milliliters of water and 1 gram of dye powder. That equals a 1% stock solution. Of course, you can double this and make more to dye larger quantities of yarn, but I'm just starting with a small amount to try to get the idea of it across. So 100 milliliters of water, 1 gram of dye powder equal 1% stock solution. If you used all of that stock solution, 100 milliliters, and dyed 100 grams of fiber, you would have a 1% depth of shade, which is on this gray scale here, it would be this little swatch. If I used half of that, 50 milliliters, on that same quantity of yarn, it would be a medium gray or lighter gray than the 1%. It's reduced by 50%. If I used 1/10 of this stock solution on 1/10 of this amount of yarn, 10 grams of yarn, what would I get? Okay, you could kind of look on this chart using a 1% stock solution. I'm going to use 10 milliliters of it, 1/10 of it. I would get the same color as if I used 100 grams of yarn and 100 milliliters. So 10 grams of yarn and 10 milliliters equal 1%. 100 milliliters and 100 grams of yarn equal 1% color, depth of shade. The shades are referred to as depth of shade, or also known as value, but the lingo in the dye industry is DOS, or depth of shade. Now, if you want to dye lighter shades, you need less of the dye. I'll go into a little bit more on that in the next video. Okay, when you think about dyeing yarn, you need to understand value, or the shades going from white to black, but think of them in color. So here we have a 1% depth of shade of two different colors: sun yellow, dye color number 119, and golden yellow, dye color number 199C. These are Procam acid dyes. So these are 1% shades. You can double it, the amount of stock solution, to make that color, and you're going to get a 2% depth of shade. That's this deeper color. Then you can double that again and you'll get an even deeper shade. But it's hard to see in the yellow too much difference. It's a little more clear in the golden yellow. So at some point, it's about as deep a color as you're going to get. Now you can go the other way too. You can use less of it. So this is, if we had 100 grams of yarn, this would be 100 milliliters of dye stock to get these two colors. If you used only half of that, you'd have a 0.5 depth of shade. And so it's now a little bit lighter. You'd think it'd be a lot lighter because you're only using half, but it just lightens it enough to see. And that's one thing, the human eye can only see so many shades, so you almost have to either decrease it by half or double it for the human eye to see a difference in the shade. So if you reduce this again by half, you're now at 25%, and it's lighter. You can see it's quite a bit lighter when I compare it right next to the 1%. So that's at a 0.25 depth of shade. Then you can reduce that by half, and now you're at, actually it's 0.125, but they just call it 0.1% depth of shade. And then if you do that, I have it again, you're now down to 0.05 depth of shade. So it's very pale. So that's the way you have to think of everything. Is if you work with milliliters and percentages, it's really simple. Everything is just doubled or halved and percentage-wise down to get the different shades. So this is yellow and the golden yellow, as I said, and here's the range using just one color called orange peel, number 232. Here's a bright orange, color number 233. Here we have lollipop red on top. Depth of shades from 2% all the way down to 0.025%. And at the bottom is a bright red, and you can see there's you go from this pink to this burgundy, all with just one dye powder, but you're just changing the shades or the strength of the dye solution in the water. Here it's magenta and fuchsia. Here it's turquoise and imperial blue. Here it's national blue and brilliant blue. This is navy. Here's a navy, watered all the way down to 0.5%. And then really dark, it's almost black. That's a 4% solution. Here's a forest green. So you get this nice sea foam green at the 0.05% intensity, and the 1% you get what you think of maybe as forest green. Okay, I guess that's the end of that video.